Oh. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ramo Rajamani Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bihata Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramannasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalaya Sada Bhavatu Me Bho Rama Mamuddhara. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram Akhandam Satchidanandam Avang Manasagocharam Atmanamakhilādharam Ashraye Bhishta Siddhaye Arthatopyadvayanandan Atitadvaita Bhanatah Gurunaradhya Vedanta Saram Vakshe Yathamati. Hari Om. We were in the second chapter of Vedantasara. Vedantasara text by itself has lot of sara. Sara means rasa. There is lot of depth. There is not even a single superfluous shloka. Not even a word which is added without having a specific purpose in mind. That much of precision is there in Swami Sadanandaji's every verse that he has written. Puja Guruji says Vedanta has lot of rasa. It is like a fruit that if you eat, you will have a lot of rasa. But only thing is, it is like a dry fruit. Means we'll have to keep chewing it to have that rasa come from these verses. So one of the ways of achieving the teaching of Vedanta is by looking back and saying how are the dots connected until the point that we are currently at. Right? How did we start and how did we come to this point, what we are studying right now. So second chapter, first chapter is simple. Recap is not needed for that. It was mainly about Anubandha Chatushtaya and Sadhana Chatushtaya. What are the four main components of a text, of any Vedantic text? And then what are the fourfold qualifications? And Guru Upasatti, that was the third topic. In spite of being very intelligent, it is said this knowledge cannot be gained with our own intellection. One has to go to the teacher. So three main topics form the first chapter of Vedantasara. Anubandha Chatushtaya, Sadhana Chatushtaya, and Guru Upasatti. Upasatti means going closer to the teacher. Second chapter began by this main topic, which is called as adhyaropa and apavada. How is this teaching given in Vedanta? teaching is given in Vedanta through the method of adhyaropa and apavada. That Shuddha Chaitanya, which is our prameya, it doesn't have any lakshanas. It doesn't have any attributes. So it cannot be indicated as an object. It is me, myself. So there is a very subtle way of indicating that truth which is not different from me. So that process of putting attributes so that we can shift our attention from those attributes to this consciousness. And once it is shifted, removing all the attributes. That process is called as adhyaropa and apavada. Putting attributes is adhyaropa, removing attributes is apavada. Now, why is this process needed? Because our purpose is not to only intellectually understand Vedanta. Our main purpose is to remove sorrow from life. Our main purpose is to abide in our nature as Ananda Swarupa. So for that, we have to know how to relate with these conditionings. Right? So adhyaropa will be done of conditionings, which is in Sanskrit called as upadhis. Now these upadhis, what is the healthy perspective? What is the right perspective towards those upadhis? All of that has to be described. All of that has to be owned up. Lot of sadhanas, or all sadhanas for that matter, is for upadhi only. Right? Mind is a conditioning. All sadhanas are for this mind. So in and through that practice of sadhana, in and through that understanding of how to relate with that upadhi, lot of our transactional anxieties, they will go down. We have seen a little bit already. Vyashti and samashti. Right? Individual and total. Now, Vyashti, samashti titles are for whom? Is it for Chaitanya or is it for upadhi? We say it is for conditioning. Dissolving individual conditioning in total conditioning. Okay, that is why adhyaropa is very much needed. One cannot go from strong identification with individual conditioning to nirguna Brahma. Right? That Brahman which is devoid of all conditionings, even if we appreciate it, we will not be able to benefit from that knowledge. So adhyaropa apavada is a systematic unfoldment of a sadhaka. So much so that when apavada comes, the sadhaka can accept it and abide in that apavada. Brahma Satyam is one side of it, but Jagat Mithya is what takes a lot of inner maturity. Okay, so that was the main idea with which we started discussing the second chapter. When we do recap, some new points also will come. It is not just verbatim recap of what was done before. So what is Vastu? Swamiji said adhyaropa means Vastuni avastu aropaha. In that Vastu which is Shuddha Chaitanya, avastu, that avastu is superimposed. Adhyaropa means adding attributes, superimposing attributes. We said, what is superimposed? Avastu is superimposed. Now, whenever he uses a word, he will describe what he means by that word. So the question was, what is Vastu and what is Avastu? He said, Vastu is Satchidananda Brahma and Avastu is Ajnanam and all its effects coming after that. So the first one is Ajnanam, ignorance, primordial ignorance. Maya, you say, avidya, all are same synonyms of that primordial ignorance. So that is what is first superimposed on this consciousness. So avidya will become upadhi. These three terms we should be familiar with. avidya will become upadhi. Shuddha Chaitanya, which is vastu, it is as though getting conditioned by this avidya. So that conditioned consciousness is called as upahita. But vastu, which is pure by itself, never affected by that conditioning, that is called as anupahita, unconditioned consciousness. Upadhi is pot, conditioned space is upahita, unconditioned space is anupahita. Now these Sanskrit words, there is no English translation. Although we are giving English translation, we should get familiar with this basic terminologies. Right? So that was 32nd and 33rd verse. 34th verse, Swamiji described what is ajnana. All indicators were given. It is said, ajnanam is anirvachaniya. It is trigunatmakam. Three gunas itself are called as ajnanam together. But at the same time, it is jnana virodhi. It will end with knowledge. It is not going to stay forever. And other indicators were also there. Now Swamiji said this ajnanam can be looked at two standpoints. One is total standpoint and one is from individual standpoint. This is where he introduced the concept of Vyashti and samashti. 35th verse. Now why is he introducing that? Because we see this whole creation as two. I see myself as one entity and this entire world, entire creation as another entity. Which actually is not true, right? We had seen that individual conditioning is never different from totality. The material with which this body is made and material with which this creation is made, there is no difference. But because our attention is on individual, there are two different methods which are given to purify this conditioning, to expand our understanding of this conditioning, and then come to abide in our unconditioned nature. Our goal is not only to stay at upadhi. Goal is to purify the upadhi, come to upahita, and then come to abide in anupahita. Upahita means conditioned consciousness. Even to appreciate that I am conditioned consciousness, it is one level above. Right? In our transaction, consciousness is the most unnoticed entity. Like the light. Objects we see, but we seldom recognize that it is the light which is making everything seen. In the presence of light alone, we can see all objects. Just like that light is unnoticed, this consciousness is unnoticed. Even conditioned consciousness is one step above because we are seeing sentiency in and through matter. And then coming to appreciate our nature as unconditioned consciousness. To help us in the process, this Vyashti and samashti, that topic was introduced, 35th verse. 36th verse, two examples were given to show individual and total. The tree and the forest. Right? Collection of trees is called as forest. So what is really there is this forest. Tree is only a part of that forest. But when total conditioning comes, it has its different power. It has its different qualities. Now this is only upadhi. Only conditioning is being indicated here. What is upahita? What is getting conditioned by that tree? You can type it in the chat. We need some interaction because this is a little subtle text. In the tree example and the forest example, what is getting conditioned? What is upahita? Upadhi is the tree, right? Or upadhi is the forest. What is getting conditioned? Good. In the example, space is getting conditioned. Okay. It will come later, but you should appreciate whatever you are studying to put it in that example. Upadhi is the tree. Upahita, the condition, is the space conditioned by that tree. And anupahita will be infinite space, which is not having any condition. Now, in the case of the drop and the pond, that example is also given in the 36th verse. To show what? That aggregate of drops alone forms this entire pond, that lake. So Vyashti is that drop and samashti is the lake. Okay, Vyashti is the drop and samashti is the lake. Now this is conditioning. In that drop, in that lake, the space is getting reflected. Okay. The reflection is conditioned. Pratibimbavada it is. Space is getting conditioned by that, drop and the lake. The reflection is happening there. That is upahita, conditioned space. And space by itself is infinite space. Okay, so at the level of conditioning, something is pointed out. At the level of conditioned, also it is pointed out. And unconditioned is at infinite space. Okay. It will again come back, but if you introduce it in 36th verse, later it will become easier. Now, just like samashti conditioning was there, the effect was different. Swamiji said, of this ajnanam also, when it operates at totality, samashti ajnanam, it is vishuddha sattva pradhana. It's an exalted conditioning with predominance of sattva guna. Rajas and tamas is as though negligible. So that sattva guna is very high. And this conditioning is the conditioning of Bhagavan. Ishvara's conditioning is this vishuddha sattva pradhana, sattva upadhi. Now, upadhi is this one, vishuddha sattva pradhana. Same Chaitanya gets conditioned by that upadhi and gets the title of Ishvara. So, upahita Chaitanya, that is given in 38th verse. Conditioned consciousness, what is the nature of it? Because it is vishuddha upadhi, it is sarvajna, sarveshwara, sarvaniyanta. So devotional side also we saw, whenever we think of Bhagavan, I hope Shivratri day, this indicator of Bhagavan came to mind. That is the only difference. When we start studying Vedanta, what should happen is our previous practices should get deeper. Whom I am worshipping in one form, his real nature is this. This is what is mentioned in Vedas. Upanishad means Vedas only. So this is Bhagwan's nature mentioned in Upanishads, in Vedas. And this is how our devotion can get deeper. Okay, by our study of Vedanta. And then different titles are also given based on the functions that Bhagavan does. All of it should make our sadhanas more meaningful and our understanding of Bhagavan more deeper and come closer to him. Okay, like Sarvajna, for example, we said, he knows everything that is happening in this world. What thing has to happen when, which karma phala has to go to whom. So why doubt that he doesn't know what is good for me in my life? Right? Whatever things are happening, it is very well in place. According to Bhagwan's Ichha, it is happening. Hari Ichha Balavan, whatever is his Ichha, it will happen. Then it was said, the same Upahita Chaitanya, Bhagwan's conditioning, it is having three titles. One is, it is called as Karana Sharira, 39th verse. Karana Sharira, it is called as Anandamaya kosha and Sushupti. Now, why are we calling this for samashti conditioning? Because actually speaking, there is only samashti. Right? So these titles can go even for samashti. If we want to keep our attention on Vyashti, then it will come later. These attributes will be put for Vyashti also. But in true sense, it applies only for totality. And then 40th verse, Swamiji said, just like you understood for totality, Upanishads only say this ajnanam can work even at individual level. It can also function at individual level. That is where this ajnanam at Vyashti, individual level, that quotation was given. Just like you have one tree in that entire forest, if you decide to pay attention to one tree, then you can define it in one way. It will have its own attributes. But you should remember, it is never separate from the total. Right? More it dissolves itself with totality, more it will benefit. So 41st and 42nd verse, it spoke about what is this individual conditioning. How does ajnanam function at individual level? Total level, it was Vishuddha Sattva Pradhana. At individual level, it is Malina Sattva Pradhana. Meaning Rajas and Tamas, quantity is more than Sattva Guna. So as this individual jiva, we have to do lot of sadhanas to increase Sattva and keep Rajas and Tamas in the check of Sattva Guna. Right? Rajas, Tamas we cannot eliminate, but not becoming so Rajasic that we lose Viveka. Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, our main sadhana in life is moderation. Sattvic Buddhi is the one which knows when to act, how much to act, and when to withdraw. What is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. What thing I should be afraid of, what thing I should not be afraid of. Where to be fearless and where to really have fear. Towards doing something wrong, it is very good to have fear. Right? But when it comes to the challenges which we face in life, it is good to be fearless. This Viveka, one who has, Bhagavan says, that is the sweet result of Sattvic Buddhi. So with sadhana, Malina Sattva Pradhana Buddhi has to be made Sattva Pradhana. That is why Bhagavan has kept sadhana on the side of jiva. Bhagavan doesn't have to do sadhana, right? Although when he takes leelas, he does that. Like in Ramayana, so many times it is said Bhagavan does his Nitya Karma. Sandhyavandanam he does, every day's Pujanam he does. Rameshwara he goes and makes a Shivalinga and then does Abhishekam there. That is just as, a guidance for all of us that one should keep doing our sadhanas. The 43rd verse was the nature of this, Prajna, the individual. Etad upahitam chaitanyam alpajnatva anishvaratvadi gunakam prajna iti uchyate eka ajnana avbhasakatvat. This conditioned consciousness is called as prajna. Why? Because it is having this conditioning, which itself is, limited in several ways. What does that limitation bring? Alpajnatva. It knows very little. Anishvaratva has no control over anything. Okay. So now again, the later part is elaborated of this Prajna, 44th verse. Asya prajnatvam aspashta upaditaya anati prakashakatvat. Asya means prajnasya, what we just saw in 43rd verse. Vedantasara Acharya expects we are alert. What we said in the previous word, he just gives a pronoun. He doesn't say what is he referring to over here. So just now what did we discuss? Prajna heti uchyate. So that prajna, asya prajnasya prajnatvam aspashta upaditaya anati prakashakatvat. This is called as prajna because it is prakarshena janati iti prajna. There are two etymologies. Prakarshena janati means it knows very well whatever is there in seed form of dream and waking. Okay, it is the seed of all dream samskaras and waking samskaras. That is why it is called as prajna. Or another etymology is prayena ajnaha. In that state, it is full of non-apprehension. You can also say full of ignorance, but both of them are contradictory in that sense. On one side, you say prakarshena janati, it knows very well. Another side, you say it is prayena ajnaha. And ajna, if you translate as ignorant. So what it means there is, it has non-perception. Prayena ajna means more or less nothing is perceived in that state. And then another etymology is, it is a seed form of swapna and jagrat. All samskaras have gone into unmanifest form. That is why it is called as prajna. But it is aspashta upaditaya. Malina sattva, right? Rajas and tamas is there. So the reflection of consciousness, upahita chaitanya over there is muddied. Aspashta upaditaya anati prakashakatvat. Ati prakasha means lot of brilliance. Ati means lot. Anati means dull. You see how upasargas are playing. Prakasha means light. Ati prakasha means lot of brightness. Anati prakasha means dull. That word, 44th verse, the last word, anati prakashakatvat. Meaning if there is a lake and the water is muddied, it has lot of waves and ripples. Then the reflection of the space which is falling there, that also gets muddied. This is over here also. Total conditioning, it was Vishuddha Sattva Pradhana. So the Upahita Chaitanya, the reflected consciousness there was very bright. But in this individual conditioning, prajna, reflected conditioning is dull. All these are indicators of prajna. Now, just like there were titles for Ishvara, right? What is this conditioning called as? Samashti conditioning had its own titles. Vyashti conditioning titles are given in 45th verse. Asya api iyam ahankaradi karanatvat karana shariram ananda prachuratvat koshavat achadakatvacha anandamaya koshah sarvoparamatvat sushuptihi atah eva sthula sukshma sharira prapanchalaya sthanam iti cha uchyate. Now what is this individual conditioning? Vyashti karana upadhi. If you see 39th verse, it was samashti karana upadhi, right? Total conditioning got 3 titles. Individual conditioning also is getting 3 titles. What is it? Asya api iyam ahankaradi karanatvat karana shariram. It is the karanam. It is the cause of ahankara and everything that comes after it. Ahankara adi means ahankara is the first cause, the first effect which comes. And then after that comes this mind, after that comes this physical body. So whatever conditionings are there at individual level, Karana Sharira is the cause of all these conditionings. The first conditioning is Ahankara. Asya api iyam ahankaradi karanatvat karana shariram. Because it is the cause, it gets the title of Karana Sharira. Ananda prachuratvat koshavat achadakatvacha Anandamaya kosha. It is full of Ananda. Why? Because there are no Vishayas, no objects are there. There is nothing to disturb this Ananda of Atma, which is getting reflected in this conditioning of ignorance. Ajnanam is the conditioning there. So it is Ananda prachuratvat. It is called as Anandamaya kosha. Why is it called as kosha? Koshavat achadakatvacha. So Anandamaya kosha has 2 words, right? Ananda, Anandamaya and kosha. So both of it, one reason is given. Because it is full of Ananda, it is called as Anandamaya. And because it covers. Now this covering is a real covering on our infinitude. Ignorance is there, bhoktrutva is there. So Anandamaya kosha has bhoktrutva, experiencerhood. I don't know if that's a word. But this bhoktrutva lies in Anandamaya kosha. It makes us feel we are experiencers. And what does Vedanta say? I am the substratum of experience. In this Chaitanya, there is no bhoktrutva. There is no experiencerhood in that Chaitanya. That which covers this knowledge, that is called as Anandamaya kosha. In the case of Ishvara, we saw it doesn't cover Bhagwan's knowledge. Right? Bhagwan is never ignorant about his infinitude. He never thinks himself to be Bhokta. If you remember in Ramayana, when Parvati ji does tapasya, right, all Saptarishis come and then they try to tell Parvati ji that Lord Shiva, you are going to get married to Lord Shiva. He just burnt, Kamadeva. Means for Grahastha-ashrama, right? How are you going to get married to somebody who is so nishkama, just burnt Kamadeva? Parvati ji scolds, the Saptarishis, and she says this line over here, what we previously saw about Ishvara upadhi. She says, you think Lord Shiva has become abhokta and nishkama only after burning Kamadeva? He says, Bhagwan has no bhoktrutva to begin with. Means his knowledge is very clear. He doesn't get deluded by this conditioning. Right? There is no bhoktrutva with reality in Bhagwan. But when it comes to jiva, that same conditioning dilutes this jiva. Jiva starts thinking himself to be bhokta. And once we think ourselves to be experiencer, what do we want? We say we want to do bhoga of ananda. From bhoktrutva comes kartrutva. Right? Doership comes. From doership comes karma. Actions come. From karma comes karma phala. You see what is the seed over here? Huh? One bhoktrutva, innocent looking thing, gave rise to samsara. Karma phala is there, means we'll continuously have to take physical bodies to experience those karma phalas. Doesn't matter where that sharira is. It could be in Swargaloka or it could be of an ant. Karma phala will come through different shariras. So that is how it becomes, kosha. It is as though covering this knowledge. So it is covering our infinitude. Jnanam will come and remove this ignorance. Okay. Why is it called Anandamaya kosha? That is this line. Ananda prachuratvat koshavat achadakatvacha Anandamaya kosha. Sarva uparamatvat sushuptihi. It is also called as sushupti, the individual conditioning. Why? Because it is that state in which stula and sukshma prapancha, the gross world and the subtle world, it merges back. Right? Ata eva stula sukshma sharira prapancha laya sthanam iti cha uchyate. It is that where all our gross and subtle world, it merges back. Now, if you hear this statement, you should get a, bell should ring in the eye, in the mind. That how is physical body getting dissolved in causal body when we sleep? Right? Other people are seeing this physical body. So what does it mean to say that stula sukshma sharira prapancha layasthanam? Does this, like in Pralaya, we saw actual dissolution takes place, right? When it was said in 39th verse for Ishvara, we saw Naradji's example, what happens in Pralaya. But when it comes to Vyashti, this dissolution doesn't happen like how it happens in Pralaya. It is upamana pramana. Upamana means there will be some similarity, but this similarity also will be there. So in Sushupti, when everything dissolves, it is only the abhimana which is getting dissolved. This notion or this identification with gross body, identification with subtle body, that identification gets dissolved. But in case of Pralaya, even that gross world, that itself gets dissolved. Right? So this is the small difference between Sushupti and Pralaya. We can use Sushupti to understand Pralaya. There will be similarities, like everything goes in seed form, comes back as it was before. In Pralaya also, everything goes in seed form and comes back. Right? So this is called as Vyashti, Karana Upadhi. The Karana Upadhi, which is functioning at individual level. Okay, that was this 45th verse. 46th verse is a very important verse, It is about Sushupti Avastha, deep sleep state. It's a question which comes to many sadhakas. And the way it is described in Vedantasara, you will not find it elsewhere. Of course, in other places, this discussion comes, but here it is given in a very unique way. But before we go there, let us just look at some practical sides, of this discussion about Sushupti. Even if you don't fully get the technical concept, it's okay. The main thing is, I am that pure consciousness conditioned by adhyana upadhi, which in Sushupti Avastha, consciousness gets that title of Prajna. Okay, that is a main point. But Sushupti also, deep sleep, it's a very beautiful and it's a very deep state to even explain or elaborate what is that state like. The main purpose of Sushupti Avastha is to give us this conviction that even without objects, we can be happy. We can experience that kind of happiness which is more deep, more absorbing than the happiness we get with objects of the world. So that is the first takeaway from Sushupti Avastha, that I can be happy without objects, and that itself shows Ananda is not nature of objects. Happiness is our own true nature. In deep sleep state, it becomes available to us as reflected consciousness. Right? What is the medium available there? Ignorance. That is the medium available. And this consciousness gets reflected in that medium. But why can't I experience this Ananda in waking state? That is the main thing, right? We are concerned about. Dream Ananda, we are not as much interested in. Sushupti Ananda, we get anyway. We don't have to put forth any effort. You see Bhagwan's grace. He said, for Samadhi, you will have to work hard, put forth effort. But I'll give one state, which is like deep sleep, where without effort, we will get that Ananda. No matter how much physical, pain is there or whatever, something is hurting somewhere. But Sushupti state, all that is forgotten without us doing anything specific. Only thing is, it is limited. We come back out from this Sushupti. So why don't I experience that Ananda in waking state? So I don't experience that Ananda in waking state because mind is fluctuating. Mandukya Upanishad says, mind starts fluttering. Manaspandanam happens. The moment mind starts fluttering, this entire creation is perceived. At the same time, it starts bothering us. Right? So what is Jnani's mind? Jnani's mind is like that Manasarovar lake. There are waves, which are rising, but all of them are Shivananda Laharis. Very beautiful thoughts are there. There is no agitation as such in the mind. At the same time, knowledge is there that this mind is nothing but an appearance. This entire waking world which is seen, it is nothing but an appearance in this consciousness. So if I want to use Sushupti as Upamana Praman Vichara, we saw that. How does Jivan Mukta live? We can use deep sleep as example. But always remember, whenever you use example, there will be differences. Sushupti is not Jivan Mukti. We can use Sushupti to understand Jivan Mukti. But even if the world is perceived, because it is negated, it is as though not there. Most importantly, whatever experiences bother us, that thought is negated by this jnani. We don't have to go on negating world, right? Just negate this mind. World is perceived through this mind only. Right? So with that, this Jivan Mukta is able to abide in that Ananda. So having a beautiful mind along with knowledge, that is how Jivan Mukta lives. That state where there is no finitude, like in deep sleep. Right? In deep sleep, we have no perception of space, no perception of time, no perception of boundaries. Right? In Sushupti, which profession do we belong to? Are we man or woman? What kind of sambandhas we have? None of that. Even the distinction of jiva and Ishvara is also dissolved. Right? So like that, all kinds of differences are dissolved in Jivan Mukti. Okay. So you can use Sushupti as Upamana Pramana, example. What is the difference? In Sushupti, Ajnanam is there. Right? Ignorance is very well there. It has just gone in seed form. It is going to come back again. Perception of the world will be there and it will again start bothering. But in Jivan Mukti, because it is Pramana Janya Jnanam, knowledge created through Pramana, it will never get badita. It will never get negated. Right? So that is the difference. It's a permanent result. Jivan Mukti is not something which is going to keep coming and going. And last point also we had seen that Sushupti is one avastha where we get fully recharged. Right? It's like going like in a car wash. You have all this dirt and everything accumulated from months. It goes inside, all soap and everything is put, and it comes out very nice and clean. Sushupti is like that car wash. No matter how tired we are, have a good night's sleep. Not a disturbed sleep. Good night's sleep. When we wake up, we feel more energized. Why? Because all our conditionings, mind, sense organs, physical body, has gotten rest. It was not used for some time. It all got merged into its karana. Absolute karana is Sat. Right? That's why in Chandogya we saw, in deep sleep, jiva merges with Sat. But even if you take its causal form, the conditioned form, right? In Prajna, all conditionings dissolve back. That is what gives us rest. Right? Everything is energized back. So these are some pointers about Sushupti. But over here, there is a very beautiful technical discussion. What do we generally understand? That in waking state, there is Triputi. The triad is there of experiencer, experienced, and experience. Right? Experiencer is there, Pramata is there. The object of experience is there, which is called as Prameya. And Pramana, the means of experience is there. Through these three, we have waking experience. Right? I am seeing this camera. So camera is my Prameya. I am the seer, and there is a thought, and eyes are there. With that Pramana, I am able to see that. Now it is said, what about Sushupti? In Sushupti, is there Triputi or not? What do you think? Yes or no? You can type it. If you think there is Triputi, say yes. If you think in Sushupti, there is no Triputi, you can say no. One answer you should pick. Don't worry about right or wrong. Okay. Majority said no. Come, let us read this verse and see if your understanding gets shaken a little bit. Tadanim etau Ishvara Prajnau Chaitanya Pradiptabhihi Ati Sukshmabhihi Ajnanavrittibihi Anandam Anubhavatah Anandabhuk Cheto Mukhah Prajnah Anandabhuk Cheto Mukhah Prajnah Iti Shrutehe Sukham Aham Aswapsam Nakinchid Avedisham Iti Uthitasya Paramarsha Upapattescha. Okay, part by part we will see this. Tadanim etau Ishvara Prajnau. Come to the later part of that line. Ishvara Prajnau Anandam Anubhavatah. Ishvara and Prajna experience Ananda. What is Prajna? Consciousness conditioned by individual ajnanam, individual upadhi, malina sattva pradhan. And Ishvara is same Chaitanya conditioned by Vishuddha sattva, total conditioning. Both of them, Anandam Anubhavatah, are experiencing Ananda. You know what this means, right? There is triad of experiencer, experienced, and experience in Sushupti. Ahankara is not there. Mind is not there. So who is the experiencer over here? So Prajna is the pramata. Consciousness with ajnana upadhi, called as conditioned consciousness, called as Prajna. Even at samashti level, Ishvara. To understand Prajna is experiencer is easy. How will you explain Ishvara is experiencer? Anandam anubhavatah. How is he experiencing Ananda? We say experiencing Ananda with knowledge. Bhagwan doesn't become bhokta. Prajna becomes bhokta because of malina sattva upadhi. Okay, so what is pramata? Pramata is Prajna or Ishvara. What is prameya? What is the object of experience over here? You can type. Little bit of interaction should be there. Otherwise, this Vedantasara, it's a very subtle text. What is the object of experience over here? Simple line, right? Ishvara prajna anandam anubhavata. Object of experience is Ananda. Prameya is Ananda. Anubhavataha is the experience. But the question is, if I have to experience anything of the world outside, I need to have a thought. Right? I need to have a vritti. But in Sushupti, there is no antakarana. Mind itself is dissolved. Ahankara itself is dissolved. So with what instrument is Prajna experiencing this Ananda? That instrument is described over here. It is called as ajnana vritti. Ajnana vritti bihi anandam anubhavata. In Sanskrit, this is I will have to parse, the sentence. We'll have to read it like Urdu. Read the last and then keep coming backwards. What is it? Anandam anubhavatah, it is said. With what instrument it is experiencing Ananda? It is said with ajnana vritti. Not antakarna vritti. Antakarna vritti means a thought that we are familiar with. The thought of the mind. But this is karana vritti, ajnana vritti, which is different from the vritti of the mind. Mind is dissolved in Sushupti. So this is ajnana vritti. What is the nature of this ajnana vritti? Previous it is described. Two indicators are given. Chaitanya pradiptabhihi ati sukshmabhihi. One indicator is it is enlivened with consciousness. Any vritti which is there, it will have sahaja tadatmya with Chaitanya. When the moment vritti is there, it will illumine over there. Just like moment you take water outside, reflection of sun will fall right away. Right? So over here also, Chaitanya and this vritti, there is sahaja tadatmya. This word is from Drigdarsha Viveka. Sahaja tadatmya means sahaja, how do you say in English? Effortless, natural. So this vritti is enlivened with consciousness. It's an enlivened vritti. Ajnana or Chaitanya pradiptabhi. It is enlivened by Chaitanya. Every word is very important. Very deep words they are. Ati sukshmabhihi. It is very, very subtle. Ati sukshmabhihi. I say it doesn't make any sense. What do you mean ati sukshmabhihi? Vritti itself is sukshma, right? So what is ati sukshma? What is the definition of sukshma in Vedanta? That thing which is known by fewer means of knowledge. That thing is called as sukshma. Okay, it's a very precise definition. Sthula means it can be known through more means of knowledge. Or you can say sense organs, to make it simple. The more sense organs we can employ to know an object, the grosser is that object. The less number of sense organs and no sense organs, subtler is that object. If you take a mango, for example, right, you can use all 5 sense organs to know that mango. You can see it, You can smell it, you can taste it, you can hear the sound, you can touch it. So it is gross. But if you say space for that matter, we cannot see space, we cannot hear, you can infer space through sound, but you cannot see it, you cannot touch it. So fewer the number of sense organs, subtler is that object. If you take air for that matter, right? Air doesn't have shape. It doesn't have smell, right? And it doesn't have taste. It has sound. That is how, you can infer. And also touch. By touch, you can infer that air. So the point here is, grosser means you can have more sense organs to know that object. Less the number of sense organs, subtler is that object. These are technical words. We cannot have our own definition of sukshma. Now, what would you call a thought? How do we know the thought of joy? Through eyes, through ears, by smelling it. So no sense organs are involved. That is why mind is called as the most, sukshma. So the true definition of sukshma will go for mind and all other sense organs. Right? Mind doesn't need other sense organs to know itself. That is why it is sukshma. So we came from gross world, stula to sukshma. But this karana is called as ati sukshma. Why is it called ati sukshma? It is ati sukshma because its object is ati sukshma. Its vishaya of that vritti, object of that vritti is very, very sukshma. Now, what is the vishaya of ajnana vritti? We say vishaya of ajnana vritti is abhava. Absence of thought, absence of this world, gross objects. That abhava becomes its vishaya. So subtle to appreciate that absence of something can become an object. Right? We saw this in Anupalabdhi Pramana. Praman Vichar we did, right? If there are 5 people who regularly are seated here, you say one of them is not there. Through that abhava, you can infer that this 5th person is absent today. So what became Vishaya? Abhava became Vishaya. So like that in Sushupti, there is abhava of Sukshma, there is abhava of Sthula. That is why that vritti gets the name Ati Sukshma. Because of object, by itself, there is no reason to call it as Ati Sukshma. Or another way to say it is, because it is different from the Sukshma vritti of a mind at Antakarana level, that is why it is called as Ati Sukshma. You can understand that way also. But the another way to understand is, the object of this vritti is very, very Sukshma. We say he is a subtle thinker. Now thoughts are always subtle, right? What made him a subtle thinker? Means he can think about objects which are subtle. Nuances he can go into. Right? That was a gross thought. Now what is gross about a thought? Right? The object of that thought was gross. Like that, Ati Sukshma, the object of that is very Sukshma. Abhava is the object. Now if you are paying attention, your mind should suddenly raise a question. Just now you said Ananda is the object of knowledge. And now you are saying Abhava is the object of knowledge. How can one thought have 2 objects? Right? One thought will have only one object. Either it will have Abhava or Ananda. How come you are saying there are 2 objects? So good. These thoughts should come. This is what makes our study of Vedanta more thorough. What we say there is, Paramata is Prajna, Pramana is Ajnana Vritti, and prameya is abhava. But that experience which is there, because all our conditionings have been withdrawn, right? All conditionings have been withdrawn. There is only ajnanam as the conditioning which is there. This ananda gets reflected in that conditioning. Although there is perception of abhava, the experience is of ananda. You see, two things are happening there. Perception of abhava and experience of ananda. That is why when I wake up, I make a very strange statement. What is that statement? You see later. Leave that quotation for now. Sukham aham aswapsam. I slept very well. Happily I slept. Sukham aham aswapsam. Na kinchit avedisham. I did not know anything. There is abhava anubhuti also, and there is ananda anubhuti also. Anubhuti means experience. I am experiencing void and I am experiencing ananda. Iti uttitasya paramarshah upapattescha. The one who has woken up. Now, who went to sleep? Atma never goes to sleep, right? Ahankara went to sleep. And Ahankara woke up. If Ahankara was not even there, how can it say this statement? I slept very well. No, not only I slept very well, I slept happily. I did not experience anything. You are not even there to make this statement. How come you are making this statement on waking up? You say what happens is, in Sushupti Avastha, there is samskara. There is an impression which is gathered in this Prajna. Because Prajna was Bhokta. Bhoktrutva title can never go with Atma. Atma is ever a Bhokta. If at all Bhoktrutva is given to Atma, it is only with conditioning. So over here, the conditioning is Prajna, conditioned consciousness with Ajnana Upadhi. Prajna was Pramata. Ananda was experienced, Abhava was experienced. That samskara, that impression was stored in this Prajna. And then when Ahankara woke up, it got superimposed. It started owning up this experience. And that statement is in the form of this statement. Sukham aham aswapsam na kinchit avedisham. I slept very well. I did not know anything. Okay, this is a statement made out of adhyasa, statement made out of superimposition. Ahankara was not even there to experience. Prajna experienced it, but Prajna does not speak, does not say anything. Atma also does not say anything. So this Ahankara is ever ready to claim. So it wakes up and says, I did not experience anything and I slept happily. Next session, a little bit more we will see, but I hope the words are opening up more. One thing which should get shaken is, in Sushupti Avastha, there is Triputi, but not in the form of the waking Triputi. It is Prajna who is Pramata, Vishaya is Ati Sukshma, and Vritti is, and Abhava is Vishaya, and Vritti is Ajnana Vritti. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Little bit of interaction like this is good. So I also know that you are with me, or I'm going too ahead or too slow, either way. Samashti is also called as Anandamaya kosha, just like Vyashti. Verse 39. This causes confusion. Samashti should not have conditioning of kosha. Please explain this point. That is true. Samashti doesn't have kosha, means kosha conditioning, in the sense that samashti ajnanam doesn't delude Ishvara. Maya upadhi doesn't make Ishvara ignorant. But at the same time, there is Ananda also, and it's a conditioning also. So in the sense of conditioning, it is called as kosha, right? Not in the sense of deluding. So experience of Ananda is happening. Like in this verse we saw it, 46th verse, it is said not only Prajna is experiencing Ananda, but Ishvara also is experiencing Ananda. So Anandamaya, that Anandamaya word is apt, full of Ananda, that conditioning. The best example for this is the magic doesn't delude the magician, right? So Bhagwan's Maya doesn't delude Bhagwan. He doesn't start feeling he's finite, doesn't give reality to this world. A lot of vairagya is there. So in Leelas we see that. That's why whenever Bhagwan does some Leelas as any ordinary person, if it's a Rishi Muni in front, they will say this line. Say, Bhagwan, you are doing just this Leela. We know that you are the Lord of the universe. Like Bhagwan asked Valmiki Rishi, where should I go and stay? Right? Valmiki Rishi says, this is your greatness, Bhagwan, you are asking me this. Shabriji also said that. That you are so compassionate that you give greatness to your devotees. Means you don't have to ask me where to stay. You are not adnya. You are not ignorant. You know precisely what is happening in this creation. Why should you have to ask where to stay? So that is this point. Samashti upadhi doesn't delude Bhagwan. Vyashti upadhi, it deludes jiva. Okay. If there are any follow-up questions, you can put it in the Google form about whatever we discussed today. But I hope you are getting a chance to recap and come from chapter 2 beginning to wherever we are today. More we appreciate the flow of thoughts, more we will enjoy this text. How this samashti vyashti thing is elaborated. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha.